Questions and comments. The honourable member for Kootenay, Columbia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would really like to thank my colleague for his great speech on the fact that he truly does work hard every day for middle class and those who are seeking to become part of the middle class. My riding of Kootenay, Columbia has a very interested clientele around the use of cannabis, including a long history of actually being involved in the industry in a number of different ways. They were interested enough that when I held a telephone town hall, 3,300 people stayed on the phone for an hour to listen to the experts that we had in place, and that was followed up by a whole series of questions, which I did send to the Minister of Health and the Minister of Justice. They did provide answers, and we now have a very good report available to my constituents by contacting my office. But there were some things that were not answered, and I'd like to ask my colleague whether during the testimony he heard anything around, because one of the concerns of my constituents was crossing the border into the United States, and I live in a constituency, a riding that borders the United States, and we go back and forth on a regular basis. So whether he's heard anything that the government plans to do to try and alleviate their concerns about either having to lie at the border or being refused from entry into the United States, and whether there are any other of the 38 recommendations that were put forward that the government rejected that he'd like to highlight.
The honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the NDP did point out early on, after hearing testimony of the difficulty that some people had entering the United States when asked by border guards if they'd ever used cannabis, and answered affirmatively, even though they had used the cannabis legally in Washington State and Colorado, they were denied entry to the U.S., which led to a concern by the NDP that this government should be negotiating, at least attempting to negotiate with the Trump administration, some form of agreement to recognize the reality that cannabis will be legal in Canada, and we don't want to subject Canadians to being turned away at the border or being compelled to lie. The answer we got, unfortunately, was unsatisfactory. It appears that the government has not been entering into those negotiations, and there's a real concern that after July 1, 2018, Canadians will be vulnerable in that respect. I want to end on a bit of a positive note by saying, economically, Canada has a chance to be a global leader in producing safe, quality cannabis products. We're not the only country in the world that's going to legalize. Other countries are going to do it too. And we have, this is a classic industry that is sustainable, high-tech, innovative, green. You can turn a $5 seed into $1,000 worth of product, and Canadians are global leaders. And that's why we're so adamant that the ban on importation exportation in Bill C-45 should be changed to give our Canadian businesses a chance to tap into that market, which could provide billions and billions of dollars of economic activity once other countries do as Canada does, and we abandon the old prohibitionist view of conservative parties around the world.
Reprise du débat, l'honorable